mind that and pour myself a beverage. All right. This one was requested to make up for, or to change pace from the Napoleon series by Light X Heaven. And Jay Benfield said both were awesome. So I've looked at the Kings and Generals Caesar series, but I don't know exactly which videos to do. There are quite a few videos, and I didn't know if I could just pick one and go out of order. There were a couple 2-hour ones, so I'd break those up. And then this is the House of History series, Frederick the Great. And again, I didn't know. I just picked one that's just documentary all parts. It's a 7-parter. The first and second Silesian War. I'm sure I butchered that. Frederick the Great's baptism of fire. So this is an hour and 31 minutes. It's 7 parts, so I'm going to break it up like right about here once it goes into the next. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into it now, and let's see.
It was a cold and misty morning on April 10, 1741. The 28-year-old Prussian King Frederick II looked at the small town of Mollwitz in the province of Silesia. Together with his near 22,000-strong army, he managed to use the cover of darkness and fog to creep up on the Habsburg forces quartering nearby. Judging by the campfires and the lack of movement,
I feel like I'm just jumping into something and I shouldn't be watching this. I'm going to go ahead and do it, and I'll be corrected, I'm sure, but I don't know.
They had no idea a larger force was moving in on them. Frederick ordered his soldiers to take up positions and take their battle lines. His right-hand man, the experienced Prussian general Kurt von Schwerin,
I'm going to ask right now.
If he deployed his army in a battle line, the element of surprise would be long gone. Frederick did not heed his warning, despite repeated pleas from his officers. Many years later, when reflecting on this battle, Frederick conceded he should have listened to them. It would be a costly mistake, but
Sorry, I'm asking right now. Frederick the Great's 2 Silesian Wars? No, that is not. Okay. Video.
Thus, the Battle of Mollwitz, Frederick the Great's baptism of fire, was about to commence. Ever since the Treaty of Westphalia concluding the 30 Years' War in 1648, the Holy Roman Empire had been a shadow of its former self. It was a patchwork of states, dominions and duchies, with German princes attempting to seize as much power as possible. Over the years, the two ancient European powers, Austria and France, were joined by Britain and Russia, with Poland, Spain and the Ottoman Empire in decline. Holland and Sweden were unable to maintain themselves among the European giants. In October 1740, the Habsburg Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI died without a male heir. Before his death, he had issued the Pragmatic Sanction. This meant so much as that the Habsburg hereditary territories were allowed to pass to a woman, his daughter, Maria Theresa. Yet, internal strife in Austria led to a weak and divided empire. Austria had just participated in the War of the Polish Succession and concluded a poor peace with the Ottomans. But it wasn't just the Austrian Habsburgs who were in an unstable position. For example, in Russia, Tsarina Anna passed away, and factions at court fought over control as her infant son, Ivan VI, succeeded her. The British were preoccupied with the war against Spain, and France was eager to weaken its archrival, the Habsburgs. As soon as Maria Theresa ascended to the throne, several European...
Just a random question. With everything, all these countries, right? And basically everything you're seeing here. What's the longest period of peace? Would it be since World War II, where there hasn't really been any aggression? Or, I mean, because it just seems like there's always something going on. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy. So I'm just curious.
European monarchs broke their promise of recognizing her. Meanwhile, within the turbulent European theater, one young king did not plan to play by the rules. In May 1740, King of Prussia Frederick William I passed away. Known as the Soldier King, he spent his entire reign expanding his army, dedicating the crown's revenue to drilling and improving his force. When he died, his 27-year-old son Frederick II succeeded him. He inherited a well-disciplined, modern, and relatively massive army, including a comfortably stocked war chest. Their healthy finances contrasted Prussia with the less-than-ideal finances of the electorates of Bavaria and Saxony. Their subsequent rulers spent heavily on palaces, ceremonies, and securing titles. Saxony's Elector Augustus III doubled as Poland's king and Lithuania's Grand Duke. Meanwhile, despite the electorate's troubled finances, Bavaria's Elector Charles Albert contested Maria Theresa's husband Francis of Lorraine's claim as the Holy Roman Emperor. Being an elector, and thus being able to cast an imperial vote, Frederick figured he shouldn't trade his vote for free. To make sure he played both sides, he assured Bavaria's elector that he supported his claim to the throne, albeit covertly, so he could also bargain with Maria Theresa if she turned out to have the upper hand. As such, the young king seeking to prove himself found himself in an incredibly favorable position. The geopolitical balance in Europe was quite uncertain, with all major powers preoccupied with other problems. So when Frederick learned of Bavaria lodging claims to the Habsburg inheritance and the Saxons following suit, he knew he had to act fast if he wanted to enter history books. And if we believe Frederick's writings, his motive indeed was that simple. In his own words, the satisfaction of having my name in the journals and later in history seduced me. A logical target would be Silesia, yielding the most tax from Habsburg lands. Moreover, it was one of the most industrialized areas at the time. Using the infrastructure his father left him, he mobilized his entire army much faster than any other European state could. To sketch a timeline, in October, Frederick learned of the emperor's death, and by December 16, his armies crossed the Silesian border. It was an unprovoked and unexpected attack of a minor player against the leading dynasty of the Holy Roman Empire and great power. There were barely any Habsburg troops stationed there, 4,000 at best. By January 17, the entire province was his, except for a few fortresses, among them Brieg and Neisse. All the while, Frederick engaged in active and energetic diplomacy with the ministers at home, European courts, and even with Vienna. Upon hearing of Frederick's callous invasion, the entire Habsburg court responded with shock, horror, and anger. Maria Theresa sent an army numbering approximately 20,000 under Wilhelm Reinhard von Nijperk to retake Silesia via Moravia. There was nothing but contempt for Frederick's obscene actions. Nijperk caught the inexperienced Frederick sleeping. Rapidly advancing via the west, he relieved the besieged fortresses of Neisse, marching onto Breslau. Nijperk's positioning cut Frederick off from the kingdom, headquarters, and supply lines. Frederick now had to hurry back to prevent Nijperk from cementing his position. A race between both armies emerged, trying to reach the other first. Frederick received valuable intelligence, however. Several captured Austrian soldiers revealed Nijperk's position nearby the village of Mollwitz. Thanks to the fog and slight drizzle, Frederick's army could close in on Nijperk's camp without them noticing. What followed was one of the most evident signs of Frederick's inexperience. Instead of using the element of surprise, he took his merry time deploying his army in a battle line, doing everything by the book. Additionally, he miscalculated the distance of a river close by, deploying several units behind a bend and others at a 90-degree angle from his main battle line. While all this was going on, Nijperk pulled on. His soldiers were cooking food and mainly facing the wrong direction. They were spread over the villages of Mollwitz and Grüningen. Panicked, he deployed his entire army. Thanks to having their guard down, this took over an hour. And thanks to Frederick taking his time, he allowed his enemy to position themselves in a proper battle line. Regarding the army composition, the Prussians enjoyed multiple advantages. The Austrians commanded some 19,000 troops, whereas the Prussians fielded 21,600 men.
I'm guessing Frederick made the mistake because he wasn't really a military guy before this. So he's kind of learning on the fly, if I'm understanding right.
Furthermore, they utilized an iron ramrod, a novel way to increase the firing frequency of their flintlock muskets. As a
iron ramrod? The hell is that? I've never heard that. It increases the accuracy, did he say?
result, the Prussian infantry fired up to 3 times more rapid.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I caught that right. Iron ramrod.
Troops, whereas the Prussians fielded 21,600 men. Furthermore, they utilized an iron ramrod, a novel way to increase the firing frequency of their flintlock muskets. As a result, the Prussian infantry fired up to 3 times more rapid than the Austrians.
Okay, I'm gonna guess an iron ramrod, I'm just guessing, is when someone fires and then they hand their spent gun back. They get a new one. The second person behind loads it, and maybe there's a third person, or maybe the second person hands their gun to the third person, they take that gun, and there's just like a 3-team rotation. The person shoots, hands the gun back, and they're handed a new gun, and they shoot, and it's just kind of like somebody's responsible for just loading that next one and passing it up, and that's my guess. That way you can keep the accurate, you can keep shooting instead of having one person shoot and then they have to reload and then shoot. That's my guess.
In addition, Frederick's late father drilled the Prussians, making them renowned for their discipline. In contrast, many of the Austrians were recently levied recruits. Frederick's infantry and artillery outnumbered the Austrians. However, the Austrian cavalry outnumbered the Prussians 2-1. The Austrians positioned their army in one long line with cavalry on its flanks. Meanwhile, Frederick himself manned the right flank of his army, consisting of a mixed cavalry-infantry contingent. The 2 center lines consisted of the Prussian infantry. On the left stood the heavily outnumbered Prussian cavalry. At around 2 p.m., Frederick ordered his artillery to open fire and his 2 center lines to advance onto the enemy positions. This was Frederick's first serious experience of battle. Several shells impacted the Austrian left flank, where up to 5,000 horsemen were stationed. Understanding they were under fire, they took the initiative, and without waiting for orders, they decided to launch a charge against the Prussian cavalry. The latter didn't attempt to counter the charge, despite a numerically superior Austrian force now charging them head-on. When both parties collided, the damage inflicted on the Prussians was significant. It didn't matter, Frederick was among them. Many of the Prussians devolved into a rout. Eyewitness accounts describe Frederick to behave with incredible courage, more than once risking his life with near indifference, but it didn't change a thing. With the Prussian cavalry crumbling and fleeing, the right flank of the center infantry lines was now exposed. Part of the Austrian cavalry charged into them. The situation appeared rather grim, if not hopeless, for the Prussians. The battle had only just begun and they lost control of the battlefield entirely. General Kurt Christoph Graf von Schwerin urged Frederick to leave. The king, appreciating his less than favorable situation, heeded this warning. He fled to the east with his cavalry unit, nearly being caught in the process. With Frederick gone, Schwerin, a veteran general, took over command. No matter his experience, Schwerin had a rather daunting task cut out for him. By now, the Prussian cavalry was entirely scattered and the Austrian cavalry was making serious inroads against the Prussian infantry, launching constant charges against them. There were no rare instances of friendly fire from the second line against the first line either, but the Prussian infantry held firm. They continued firing volleys against and engaging in close combat with the Austrian cavalry. They killed their commander and caused significant casualties. When the Austrian infantry regiments tried to join the fight and relieve pressure from the cavalry, they suffered the brunt of the Prussian lines firing volleys at an incredible pace. After a while, the Prussian infantry finally managed to fend off the Austrian cavalry. Subsequently, Schwerin ordered the surviving infantrymen to loot the ammunition from the slain soldiers. He concentrated the majority of the Prussian infantry on his right flank. Then he ordered the right flank forward. The left flank received the same order shortly after. The Prussian bulwark advanced, stopping in between the marching, only to fire at the enemy. They swiftly repelled a hesitant charge by the Austrian right flank cavalry. An Austrian survivor recounted the moment. The enemy army now advanced from all sides. They enjoyed a numerical superiority of up to 3,000 men. They overlapped us on both flanks. I can safely say that never in my life did I see anything finer. They marched forward with the greatest steadiness, with their lines as straight as a die, as if they were on a parade ground. Their polished weapons glinting in the sunlight made a stunning impression, and their volleys were like a constant roll of thunder. Our army became completely demoralized. Our infantry could no longer be kept together in their ranks, and our cavalry no longer had any wish to form up against the enemy. The Prussian right flank was the first to reach the Austrians. Besides firing, the front lines engaged in heavy close combat. Brutal fighting spread along the entire Austrian line. This went on for a time as the Prussian left joined in soon after. The Austrian left was the first to break. As they saw their fellow soldiers flee the battlefield, the other soldiers too broke rank and abandoned the battlefield. Nyperk understood they were losing momentum.
I have to ask, and I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm having a difficult time understanding him. I'm only picking up like every few words. I don't know if it's the accent or if it's just the talking very low and mumbled, and I'm having a difficult time, and I don't want to put closed caption on because then it would be on for the video, and I don't want to annoy people. It's very difficult. I'm trying, but I don't know if it's like a mumble or if it's the accent, but I can't quite pick up what he's saying.
It would be challenging, if not impossible, to emerge from this situation victoriously. By the late afternoon, Nyperk ordered the official retreat. Lacking cavalry, and because the night set in, the Prussians decided not to pursue the Austrians. Instead, Schwerin sent a messenger to Frederick to notify him of the victory. The Austrians retreated to Neisse, and the Prussians laid siege to Brieg, and they captured it on May 4th. Frederick made several mistakes during the battle, which he agreed to in a self-critical battle account. Despite this, letters he sent to his ministers and close relatives in the direct aftermath omit Schwerin's role in the battle entirely. His leaving of the battlefield could have multiple reasons. The most straightforward conclusion to draw was that Frederick fled, although many primary sources and subsequent historical analysis agree he showed great courage during the battle itself. He likely left upon repeated pleas by General Schwerin. But in any event, the new Prussian king managed to challenge one of Europe's greatest dynasties and emerge victoriously. In that regard, the victory at Mollwitz ensured Frederick's name traveled to all European courts. Despite not being in command himself, and the triumph largely having been achieved thanks to the discipline of his forces instilled by his father, it was a victory nonetheless. And the young king made sure he learned of his mistakes. He set up a grueling training regimen for his cavalry to never again be unprepared. He rose before dawn and drilled throughout the day. Naturally, he expected his officers and soldiers to do the exact same. Mollwitz would not be the final battle between the young king and the Habsburgs. If anything, as Thomas Carlyle put it, Mollwitz was the loose pebble precipitating an avalanche. The First Silesian War and the War of the Austrian Succession had only just broken out.
Do you ever wish you could turn back the clock and feel young again? Many men suffer from low T, even myself at one point. And that's when I found out.
Okay, I'm going to end it here. The accent is a little difficult for me. But I could understand him when I could see him. But I was listening to what he said and I was looking at his mouth. But I'll get it. I don't want to put closed caption on because I just don't want to leave you stuck with closed caption. So, yeah, we'll end this here. This is part 1, and we'll knock these out in these sections they have them as. So, thought it. The hell? It's like there's a long hair somewhere around here, and it ain't mine. Okay. Maybe I'm just freaking out for nothing. Okay, I'm gonna end this here. This is part 1. This is good. I cover. Son of a bitch. All right, I'm gonna end this here. It's a hair playing tricks on me. All right, have a good day. Have a good night.